I watched aggressive company owner fire my friend who was the only person in the country able to restore an $800,000 historic building, just for refusing to get him a coffee. The project totally collapsed, the boss was eventually fired, and a whole chain of events brought down the company. This story didn't happen to me, but I was present when Theo got the call that started the whole thing, and he later told me the full story. Since he isn't on Reddit, I'm sharing this on his behalf because it's just too good to keep to myself. All names have been changed to protect privacy. Note, listed buildings play a key role here. For the unfamiliar, in the UK, a listed building is protected due to its historical importance, and any work on it is highly regulated and scrutinized. So my friend Theo, 47M, possesses a specialized construction skill that only about 20 people across the UK can claim, restoring and renovating ancient buildings with a method that's been obsolete for centuries. Almost all his work revolves around conservation projects on listed buildings. Here's how everything went down. A significant Grade 1 listed property needed repairs. The principal contractor, AVT Limited, won the tender. There was a part of the renovation that's extremely niche, the kind almost no one these days can do. Clueless about how to find someone, the contractor asked the architect, who handed over a list of approved specialists. The contractors went with my friend Theo because he was available first. On the fifth day of work, the owner of AVT Limited, let's call him Shouty Boss, 60 male, rocked up to the site. According to Theo, this fellow was loud, arrogant, and pushy from the get-go. Theo focused on his task and tried his best to ignore the guy. At one point, Boss turns to one of his carpenters and demands a coffee. The carpenter disappears. After wandering around and complaining about delays bleeding money left and right, Boss notices the coffee still isn't here and asks Theo, "Boss, where's my bloody carpenter with my coffee?" Theo, "No idea." "Boss, go find him." Theo, "I'm just here for this wall job. I don't actually work for AVT." Boss, "I don't give a toss. You're on my site. You follow my orders. Now go fetch my damn coffee." Theo, "First off, don't speak to me like that. Second, my contract is to do these walls, that's all. I am definitely not a gopher." Boss, getting nastier, "Oh, so you don't like my tone? Who's your subcontractor?" Theo, "Nobody. I'm self-employed, just me. A bloody day laborer, and you have the nerve?" With rising voice, "Do you know who I am?" Theo, "Yep." Boss, "Well, you're fired. Get off this site, now." Theo, "All right, put it in writing." Boss, "Just get lost. Get off my site." At that, Theo pulls out his phone and starts recording. Theo, "All right, I'll go. I just want proof you told me to leave." Boss grabs Theo's hand and yells into his phone, "Get off this site, you idiot. You're fired. If you're here in 10 minutes, I'll have you thrown out." Theo, "Fine, no problem." Theo, being the professional he is, packs up his stuff and heads out. As he's leaving, the site manager, Jack, 57M, passes him with a coffee in hand for Boss, joking, "Leaving early, Theo? Part-timer." Theo, "Nope, your boss just fired me. Contract's over. Sorry, mate." The site manager goes pale and begs him to wait, knowing exactly how serious this mess is. Theo leaves anyway. What Boss and most folks didn't realize was this. Only about 20 specialists in the UK could do Theo's job, and they all had work lined up for months. Theo was only available because another project was postponed. By the time he got home, he had 12 missed calls from the contractor's office. That was Thursday. 2 lost days for the site so far. Theo was clear. He'd consider coming back, but only if he's compensated for lost time and, most importantly, receives a genuine in-person apology from Boss. When I caught up with Theo, he was fielding more calls from the desperate site manager, who told him the boss was very sorry, but currently abroad and couldn't apologize in person. Theo had also already alerted the other specialists on the architect's list, so no one would unknowingly get pulled into a disaster. Predictably, the other specialists rejected AVT's last-ditch overtures. They already had full plates. Theo warned the architect too, since unscrupulous contractors might cut corners on work this specialized, faking the craftsmanship. Theo was standing firm, no work until he was fully compensated for lost days, with an apology delivered to his face. He was sure he'd get both. I told him I'd pay for a front row seat to witness that apology. Update 1. The site manager called again, this time saying Boss is threatening legal action if Theo doesn't return. The manager was deeply embarrassed, but relayed the message. Theo reminded him he has proof he was fired outright. Another call came later. Boss would apologize face-to-face on Friday. Could Theo start work tomorrow? Theo declined. After that legal threat, the terms had changed. 1. Apology in person before work restarts. 2. Pay for all lost days. 3. Full contract value paid upfront before starting. 4. He could, barely, squeeze in the job if it restarted by Thursday, working weekends if needed. I asked why he didn't exploit the situation and charge extra, considering boss's behavior. Theo replied, true to his gentlemanly principles, it's not right to price gouge under pressure. As he put it, only the world's best crooks take advantage like that. Edit. Small correction. When Theo said only 7 others did the same work, he meant 7 businesses, not 7 total people. Realistically, that's about 20 skilled workers across the UK. Still rare, but not literally 7 individuals. Sorry for any confusion. Update 2. No apology after all. The site manager was scapegoated and fired because he hadn't warned boss about the shortage of specialists. Theo contacted AVT's operations director, boss's right-hand man, informing him the time for an apology had passed. He would not be returning. Ops director was sincerely apologetic, offering very generous pay if Theo would reconsider. Theo declined, making it clear he'd only contemplated returning as a favor to the original site manager. With that person gone, Theo felt no obligation. When I suggested he use his influence to get the site manager rehired, Theo shook his head. Boss's ego was too fragile to admit he'd been wrong or to rehire upon demand. They'll only do it if it's their idea, he said. Replacing an experienced site manager just 4 years from retirement isn't easy at 61. This whole mess made me respect Theo even more than before. Update 3. At 2 a.m., after a late pub trip, Theo got a call from Jake, the fired site manager, who incidentally is known for his charity work in town alongside Theo. The twist: the architect had reached out to Jake about a site manager opening at another company, thanks to Theo tipping off the architect. Jake called to thank Theo and asked about his favorite drink to send as a token. He wasn't hired yet, but felt optimistic. Theo insisted it was the architect's doing, but Jake replied, "You ticked beehives and made the architect call me. Because of you, I don't have to deal with that prick ever again." They agreed, a bottle of Cardhu Gold Reserve, only to be shared if Jake landed the new job and came over to drink it with Theo. As Theo poetically put it to me, "Bugger off, mate. You can buy your own whiskey. I wasn't invited." It's all promising. The only downside, it doesn't look like we'll ever see that self-important boss groveling for forgiveness. Additional information. Theo and Jake moved in similar charity circles, Jake with Rotary Club, Theo with Roundtable. Their relationship was more than just professional. Ops director later called, suggesting bringing Jake back with a generous salary adjustment to keep the project afloat. But it was too late. Theo explained the calendar just wouldn't permit him to finish the job. The soonest the work could be completed under perfect conditions was 11 days, but Theo was booked for his next assignment starting November 4th. At best, there were only 10 working days available, with weekends. Not enough. I quietly wished I could have eavesdropped on boss as he learned how badly he'd shot himself in the foot. Many readers asked what Theo actually did, but it's too identifying for a public forum. The reason so few can do this job: it takes 5 years to even become competent, and nearly a decade as an apprentice to be a true master. Work on these listed buildings always mandates at least one such craftsman. Update 4. Bad news: Jake didn't get the other job. He met the new firm, but for unclear reasons they passed. Theo was meeting him Sunday to talk it over, visibly disappointed for Jake, though it wasn't his fault. Jake planned to file an unfair dismissal claim. I'd hoped for a win-win-win ending. Life rarely obliges. There was a slight miscommunication. Turns out the new company offered Jake an 18-month contract on a distribution center project, not permanent employment. But the pay was a bit better than what he had at AVT, with possible extensions if future contracts appeared. Meanwhile, AVT arranged for a Bulgarian specialist to finish the restoration. Theo, smirking, suspected the Bulgarian would use a similar but non-identical 19th century Sophia-based technique, different from the strict 17th century English method needed. The result? Theo planned to wait until the Bulgarian got paid, then tip off authorities to check the materials, which would almost certainly mean tearing it all down and starting again. Theo had ethics. He didn't want to sabotage the Bulgarian's earnings. He'd only report after the man finished and got paid. He's got a living to earn, Theo said. Update 5. The Bulgarian got right to work, using supplies from a general builder's yard. The specialized material required for this kind of restoration was too unwieldy to bring from Bulgaria, if you could even find it there. And, crucially, none of the 3 UK specialist suppliers received an order for the correct goods, one of whom had stockpiled just for Theo. Unless the materials were hidden in a luggage truck, the right materials just weren't being used. Theo is a stickler for historic accuracy. He'd never let poor work slide, even if he weren't annoyed with boss. If the Bulgarian finished in less than 3 weeks, it would unquestionably mean modern shortcuts. When I rang Theo for updates, he teased me. Want me to wear a body cam? Link you into every call too? Cue plenty of mocking back and forth. Update 6. The Bulgarian specialist, Stefan, finished, working weekends and marathon 12-hour days to avoid racking up hotel bills. Theo waited until he was paid, then notified planning authorities, the client, the architect, and Historic England, explaining his concerns along with minimal intrusion methods for testing the completed work. Within days, reports emerged. The verdict: wrong method, wrong materials, the 19th century Sophia technique, not the mandated 17th century English one. The architect, typically restrained, was absolutely livid. Apparently, boss gained the moniker ignorant bloody spoon, or worse, among colleagues. Soon enough, inspectors found not just bad restoration, but evidence of criminal damage. An original internal feature, part of the roof structure, had been ripped out and replaced with a modern support, expressly forbidden. This was boss's decision. Destroying parts of a Grade 1 listed building is a criminal offense, potentially jail. Everyone at AVT started finger-pointing. Boss denied responsibility, but the project manager had emails showing boss's direct instruction. By the 19th, about 4 weeks after Theo's firing, the client had kicked AVT off-site, set up invitations for new restoration bids, and planned to sue for £800,000 in damages. The planning department also wrote AVT, signaling possible prosecution and warning of a detailed specialist inspection. After the letter circulated, boss went running to the lawyers. 4 staffers called Theo within an hour, eager for updates. Now everyone waited on 1. The client's formal inspection, which, if it confirmed damage, would mean AVT gets fired and owes for repairs. 2. The local authorities' conservation experts. Destroyed features mean possible prosecution for the company and the individual responsible. Theo was truly upset at the irreversible damage. That beam sat there for 400 years doing its job until that plunker. He genuinely grieved the loss. Edit. Clarifying for accuracy, the planning department's letter didn't technically threaten prosecution outright, just informed AVT of an upcoming specialist inspection. Any potential prosecution would take months. Lots of secondhand information from AVT staff. Turns out everyone was happy to supply Theo with news. It's a gossipy little corner of the construction world. Requested information. Jake, the original site manager, did get another job, subject to a background check. AVT paid out his 3 months' notice and 12 unused holidays at once. Plus, he kept the company car till March. He wasn't sorry to leave, and started the new job at a slightly higher salary, with the prospect, but not certainty, of it going permanent. He dropped his unfair dismissal claim. Having come out ahead, Jake kept his promise and brought Theo the whiskey. A Yorkshireman always delivers on his word. They drank it together, admiring Jake's new charity sleigh for the local Christmas parade. As for me, my grammar's atrocious, but I'm Welsh, and these updates are coming late at night, sometimes whiskey-fueled. Update 7. Karma arrived for boss. He was interviewed under caution by investigators, meaning prosecution was a real possibility. The same was scheduled for the project manager and even Jake, the site manager, though Jake was confident. The critical decision was made after he'd left. The project manager was armed with an email chain concretely tying the destruction to boss. Boss even tried offering bribes and threats to get the manager to delete evidence. That in itself is another serious offense. Best of all, boss was officially fired from AVT. Theo got at least 4 calls from delighted employees betraying the news. How does a company owner get fired? Turns out his brother and cousin owned enough shares to vote him out, fearing the collapse of their golden goose. Boss left kicking and screaming, even needing to be escorted out. He tried to ring staff, genuinely shocked no one stood by him. Rumor had it the next step would be historic. The the building owner hiring other contractors, and AVT permanently blackballed. Unfortunately, real life isn't a movie. Sometimes everything fizzles to a slow wake for justice rather than a perfect closing shot. Edit. Small legal correction. The planning department's letter did not explicitly state a prosecution was coming, just announced an inspection. Any prosecution would take time. A brief note on my silence. On January 7th, I was severely injured in a car accident, hit from behind by a lorry while stopped on the motorway, squeezed between two trucks, multiple fractures, 112 stitches, vision issues, lung puncture. I looked a mess. I've always prided myself on finishing what I start, so my wife stepped in to let everyone know why the story update stopped. The thing bothering me most, not being able to use my hands. People kindly offered help, but the NHS took care of me. Any support could go to Macmillan Cancer Support, our chosen charity. Final update. Do you know who I am? Backfires on the business owner. May 2020, my wife here. Mark, the narrator above, passed away unexpectedly, weeks after returning from hospital. A ruptured aorta, likely from the crash, took him quickly. Nothing could be done. I'm only posting here now because I realized people were waiting for a conclusion to this wild saga. Thanks for your kind words and for supporting Macmillan in Mark's name. Special gratitude to mods who helped us spread the news. Posting this hasn't been easy, but the hundreds of compassionate comments eased the pain. Good crying, as some say. I promised Mark I'd find out what ultimately happened to all the people involved. Jake, site manager, now 62 male. He started a new contracted role on a distribution center. Being self-employed on an 18-month fixed contract had felt like a disadvantage. But after COVID-19, the company had to keep paying him while regular staff were furloughed. What seemed negative saved him financially. Boss, aka Shouty Boss, 60 male, he had to sell his share in AVT. He personally guarantees any liabilities, meaning if his mistakes land the company in unpayable debt, he could lose his own house. By the last update, criminal charges hadn't landed yet, but tax fraud investigation had begun. Previous historic building violations had surfaced. Theo, 47 male. Professionally, he flourished. The pandemic left him working nearly uninterrupted as his solo projects meant little social distancing. He deeply grieved Mark's death. His wife said Theo had been quietly devastated, hiding his pain in public but breaking down privately, especially after visits with Mark's widow. The criminal case against Boss was ongoing. If convicted of historic building damage or fraud, prison awaited, and a huge fine was certain. By July, Jake's role served him well. His supposedly bad contract kept him on full pay through the pandemic while others lost jobs. Mark's widow shared her grief openly, urging all to treasure loved ones and never assume life will just coast along safely forever. Life's randomness took everything from her in a moment. That wraps up the whole story. This story highlights how arrogance and ignorance in management can have truly catastrophic consequences, destroying projects, careers, and even a family business. It's a sobering reminder that especially in specialized fields, respect and humility pay far higher dividends than bluster and bullying. Here is a question for you. When have you seen arrogance in leadership backfire spectacularly, and how did it play out? Share your stories below.